I discovered my wife has been lying about our daughter's paternity for years, and I don't know what to do. I never thought I'd end up writing something like this. Honestly, I feel like I'm living in a nightmare right now, and I don't know where to turn. I guess I should start from the beginning. My wife, Sarah, 35F, and I, 37M, have been together for over 15 years, married for 10 of those. We have one daughter, Emily, 9F, who has always been the light of my life. From the moment she was born, I knew I'd do anything for her. I've spent every moment trying to be the best father I could be, making sure she has everything she needs and that she grows up in a loving home. Our marriage hasn't been perfect, but I thought we were solid. We had the usual ups and downs, money stress, work stress, the strain of raising a kid, but nothing out of the ordinary. I thought we were a team. I thought we had each other's backs. But I was wrong. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage and my family was a lie. A few months ago, I overheard a conversation that I wasn't supposed to hear. Sarah was on the phone with her sister, and they were talking about something that immediately caught my attention. At first, I didn't want to eavesdrop, but then I heard her say something about Emily's real father. My heart dropped. I stayed frozen in place, listening as Sarah talked about how she had never told me the truth. She said she had always been afraid of what I'd do if I found out and that she couldn't bear to lose me or Emily over a mistake she made years ago. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I felt sick. I didn't confront her right away. I needed time to process what I had just heard. For days, I walked around in a daze, trying to figure out what to do. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, wondering if I had somehow misunderstood. But deep down, I knew I hadn't. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I sat Sarah down and told her what I had overheard. She burst into tears immediately, which only made me angrier. I asked her straight up if Emily was mine, and after a few minutes of crying and trying to avoid the question, she finally admitted it: Emily isn't biologically mine. She had an affair early in our relationship, around the time we first got married. She found out she was pregnant a few months later but never told me about the affair or that there was a chance Emily wasn't mine. I was crushed. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. How could she keep something like this from me for so long? I had spent the last 9 years thinking Emily was my daughter, and now everything was in question. I didn't know what to say, so I just sat there in silence while Sarah sobbed and apologized, over and over again. Since that conversation, my world has been spinning. I can't look at Sarah the same way anymore. Every time I see her, I feel a mixture of anger, betrayal, and sadness. We haven't told Emily anything yet, she's too young to understand, and I don't even know what I'd say to her. I've tried to keep things as normal as possible for her sake, but it's getting harder every day. I haven't told anyone else about this, not even my closest friends or family. I feel like I'm trapped in a cage of secrets, and I don't know how to break free. On the one hand, I love Emily with all my heart, and I can't imagine my life without her. I've raised her, loved her, and been there for every important moment in her life. She's my daughter, no matter what. But on the other hand, every time I look at her, I'm reminded of Sarah's betrayal. It's like there's a constant shadow hanging over everything. I've thought about getting a paternity test just to confirm everything, but at this point, I'm not sure if it would make a difference. Even if the test came back saying she isn't biologically mine, I know it wouldn't change how I feel about her. She's my daughter, and I'm her father. Nothing will change that. But the weight of the secret is unbearable, and I don't know if I can stay in this marriage, knowing what Sarah did and how long she's kept it from me. To make things even more complicated, Sarah has been begging me for forgiveness. She says she loves me, that she made a terrible mistake, and that she never told me because she didn't want to lose our family. She swears she hasn't cheated on me since the affair and that it was a one-time thing. She says she's willing to do anything to make things right, but I don't even know if that's possible at this point. Part of me wants to forgive her and move on for Emily's sake. I don't want to tear our family apart, and I can't imagine how devastating it would be for Emily to lose the only father she's ever known. But another part of me can't get past the betrayal. Sarah lied to me for almost a decade, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust her again. I've been sleeping in the guest room for the past few weeks, trying to figure out what to do. Every day feels like a battle between my heart and my head. I love Emily more than anything, and I don't want her to suffer because of something that isn't her fault. But I also don't know if I can stay in a marriage built on lies. I've thought about leaving, but that brings up a whole new set of questions. How would custody work? Would I still be able to be Emily's father legally, even if I'm not biologically related to her? Would she even want to stay with me if she found out the truth? And what about Sarah? Do I even have it in me to forgive her for this? The truth is, I don't know what to do. I feel like my life is falling apart, and I don't know how to pick up the pieces. I never thought I'd be in this situation, and I have no idea how to move forward. Do I try to rebuild my marriage for Emily's sake? Or do I cut my losses and start over, even if it means potentially losing the only daughter I've ever known? If anyone has been in a similar situation, I could really use some advice right now. I feel like I'm drowning, and I don't know how to get back to the surface. Update. Thank you to everyone who commented and offered support. I've been reading through all of your advice, and it's helped me a lot to hear from people who've been through similar experiences. After much thought, I've decided to get a paternity test. I know it might not change anything emotionally, but I need to have the full truth in front of me before making any decisions about the future. As for Sarah, we've started going to couples therapy. It's been difficult, to say the least. There are days when I feel like I can't even look at her, but I owe it to Emily to at least try to work through this. If therapy helps, great. If not, at least I'll know I tried everything before making a final decision. I'll keep you all updated on what happens. For now, I'm just taking things one day at a time. Story 2. My sister stole my wedding date. I, 29F, recently got married to my now husband, Jake, 31M, and it was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. But something happened that completely overshadowed the entire wedding, and I still can't wrap my head around it. A little background: I have an older sister, Rachel, 32F, who has always been the center of attention. Growing up, she was the golden child, straight-A student, star athlete, the one everyone in the family adored. I was the quiet, artsy one who often felt like I lived in her shadow. Despite this, we've always had a decent relationship. We've had our fair share of sibling rivalry, but nothing too serious. Or so I thought. When Jake proposed to me a year ago, I was over the moon. We had been dating for 5 years, and I knew he was the one. I started planning my dream wedding almost immediately. I'm a bit of a planner, so I got everything organized pretty early: venue, catering, photographer, the works. The date was set for September 14th, and everything was going smoothly. Enter Rachel. A few months before the wedding, she and her boyfriend, Tom, 33M, got engaged. I was happy for her, of course, and excited that we'd both be getting married around the same time. She started planning her wedding too, and we'd often talk about our plans and ideas. But as time went on, I noticed she wasn't making much progress. She'd complain about not finding the right venue or struggling to lock in a date that worked for everyone. I tried to help, offering suggestions and giving her some of my vendor contacts, but she always seemed frustrated. Then, about 2 months before my wedding, Rachel dropped a bombshell. She announced that she and Tom had finally set a wedding date, September 14th. The exact same date as mine. I was floored. At first, I thought it was a joke. Why on earth would she choose my wedding date? When I confronted her about it, she brushed it off, saying it was the only date that worked for their venue and all their guests. She acted like it was no big deal, as if we could both just have our weddings on the same day and everything would be fine. I couldn't believe it. I tried to reason with her, telling her how much work I'd put into planning my wedding for that date and how unfair it was to steal it from me. But Rachel dug her heels in. She said that it was her date now too, and that I was being selfish by not wanting to share it. She even suggested we combine our weddings into one big family event. I was livid. This was supposed to be my special day, and she was hijacking it for her own. I talked to my parents about it, hoping they'd back me up, but they were surprisingly neutral. They didn't want to get involved and said that they'd just go to both weddings if we had them on the same day. I was furious. It felt like no one was taking my side, and I was being forced to compete with my sister for attention on the one day that was supposed to be all about me. Eventually, I had no choice but to move my wedding. The venue was able to reschedule us for 2 weeks later, and while I was glad we didn't lose any of our vendors, it still felt like a punch in the gut. I couldn't believe I was the one who had to change everything because Rachel refused to compromise. Fast forward to the day of her wedding, which should have been my wedding day. I didn't go. I couldn't. The thought of sitting through her ceremony and reception, watching her take over what was supposed to be my day, was too much. Jake understood completely, and we spent the day together, trying to focus on our upcoming wedding and not let Rachel's selfishness ruin the experience for us. My wedding, when it finally happened, was beautiful. Jake and I had an amazing day surrounded by our friends and family, and I tried to push all the drama out of my mind. But it was hard not to feel bitter. Rachel barely spoke to me at my own wedding, and I could tell she was annoyed that I hadn't gone to hers. Our relationship has been strained ever since. I'm still hurt and confused by the whole thing. Why did she do it? Was it some kind of power move? Or was she genuinely clueless about how much it would hurt me? I don't know if we'll ever be close again, and that breaks my heart. But what hurts even more is that my wedding, which should have been one of the happiest days of my life, will always be tainted by this ridiculous family drama.